Now, as someone who taught third and fourth graders, I can confirm that the literacy crisis is a very real thing, and everyone should be concerned about it. It affects so much. It's way bigger than you think.
A video of Kai Cenat reading has recently gone viral for all the wrong reasons.
The video of Kai Cenat reading out loud, I feel like is a good example of the types of concerns people have surrounding literacy.
You can use pair a new habit with a specific time and location. The implementation intention formula is I will behavior and time and location.
And a lot of people are like, oh my god, this is so funny, but it's actually not. We're experiencing an extreme literacy crisis, and it's not in the way that people would think. When we think of illiteracy, we think of not being able to read or write, but literacy encompasses so much more than that. Not only is literacy being able to actually decode and read what you're reading, which still includes fluency and understanding sentence structure, but then it's actually being able to comprehend what you're reading, what the main idea of the text is, grasping tone and nuance, my favorite word, and implied reading, meaning being able to make inferences on what you're reading based on context clues. And then there's still other levels to reading literacy. There's understanding subtexts and biases. There's distinguishing literal versus metaphorical language, sarcasm. And then there's like a top level of being able to determine the credibility of a source, being able to spot misinformation or propaganda, and cross-check claims instead of just reacting impulsively. And then there's still being able to apply that type of knowledge in real life and using metacognition, which is thinking about what you're thinking and why you're thinking it. And unfortunately, we are starting to see a decline in all of these areas. And as a Gen Zer, this is not something where it's like, ha, so funny, people are so dumb. This is actually really scary and intentional. And this is something I, especially as a content creator who is on the internet sphere every single day, have been noticing be heavily increased within the past. Honestly, it's been getting worse with each year. So I wanted to talk about it while I get ready, because you know it's time for yet again another unfiltered get ready with me. Hi girls, welcome back to Boss Girlified. It is your girl, Tima. And this is one of those conversations I've been really wanting to have for a while now. And it's not to point the finger, okay? Every time I talk about stuff like this, I always get one or two comments where it's like, yeah, this just seems like something my mom would complain about the younger generation. I'm Gen Z. I'm 24. I was born in 2001. This is not one of those videos where I'm trying to be like, oh, young kids these days, you know what I mean? It's really scary, and it's making us a lot easier to manipulate, and we're seeing it happen in real time right under our noses. And it's even scarier when you consider the political climate right now. And I don't care what part of the curb you personally fall on, there being evidence of a politician lying to the general public is genuinely scarier than I can even put into words.
She was trying to ram this guy with her car. He shot back, he defended himself. If people want to say that we should have a legitimate debate about, you know, what was she really doing, right? Was she panicking when she drove into this officer, or was she actually trying to ram him? That's a reasonable conversation.
But it's definitely not something that's irreversible. We just kind of have to get on the curve right now and have the conversations about it. Not just literacy-wise, but just learning more about the world around you in general, which includes your body and your health. The internet has the girlies in a frenzy whenever it's anything beauty related. But what about our health? Especially the health of the girl downstairs. Which is why I had to introduce you girlies to Evie, which is the partner of today's video. Evie is an at-home vaginal microbial testing and clinical care program designed to get us girlies precise answers about our vaginal health. And based on those results, receive clinician-approved prescription care. With one at-home swab, the Evie Vaginal Health Test screens for 700 plus bacteria and fungi, including the pesky ones responsible for BV, UTIs, and much more. Get to know your girlfriend downstairs and where she is health-wise with Evie, which will be linked in the description down below. And when you use my code BOSSGIRLIFIED10, BOSSGIRLIFIED10, or scan the QR code on the screen, you can get 10% off of your purchase of up to $25. Thank you so much to Evie for partnering with me on today's video. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get straight back into it. Now, this is not to dig at Kai Cenat. This is just a really good example of what people are talking about when they say that there's a literacy crisis right now. So if we really break down the video of Kai Cenat reading, right? It's been a whole meme, it's been haha funny, but let's actually unpack what's happening here.
One of the ways to do this, to explore and adopt alternative beliefs, such as the four agreements, the decision.
Now, when he's reading, you can tell it's kind of like, you know, that one kid in class who got called to read and they would just kind of try to get it done. That's what it was giving. And the reason why I say that is because the punctuation was off. There were pauses where there didn't really need to be pauses. There were just gaps in the sentence structure, at least in the way he was reading it.
I would even say it's kind of jolted, where he emphasizes random words and speaks really quickly, but you can tell he's not reading and understanding what he's reading. He's just saying the words that he sees. Growing up and learning how to read, oftentimes our teachers paired comprehension quizzes about passages that we were reading with the actual passage. They did it to make sure that you were actually understanding what you were reading.
So basically, I'm gonna read this sentence, right, that I have in my notes, okay? What we saw in that video of Kai Cenat reading was a service level example of illiteracy. Basically, not understanding sentence structure when reading from a book. And again, this is not a dig at Kai Cenat, okay? We can point out something that's going on in the culture and, you know, things that are a little bit concerning without digging at the person. Kai Cenat is just a human being. This is not a flaw to his character. And I hate that a lot of people can't distinguish the fact that, you know, yeah, it's something that's interesting and it's a phenomenon that's happening, but we don't need to bully someone because they, you know, are not at the greatest reading level. But just like if we were in school right now, it would be graded for literacy or like an out loud reading comprehension test. And the reason why it would probably not get the best grade is because there's a lack of sentence structure and therefore probably a lack of comprehension. Kai Cenat is my age, okay? He is 24 as well. So we did grow up in the older Gen Z. Literacy is not about reading books, okay? This is not about reading books at all. It's a lot deeper than that. It's about understanding media. It's about understanding the news. It's understanding laws, medical info, and political rhetoric, and literally any of the systems that control our day-to-day lives. So the example of Kai Cenat's reading is very surface level, but where the real danger lies is the deeper literacy levels.
The class divide of the future is going to be who can read and critically think and who cannot. Let me explain. What every educator on this app is talking about, and what every educator in the field is noticing, is a dramatic decline in basic critical reasoning skills and basic literacy skills among students. This is particularly pronounced among high school age students, where they're engaging with more complex material and can't grasp basic concepts or manage basic memory about those concepts. And what this is creating is a generation entering the workforce without basic comprehension skills that is going to make it very hard for them to keep and maintain any form of employment. On the inverse of this, we're seeing kids in more affluent families being not only pulled out of the public school system and sent to things like Montessori schools, but being pulled away from technology, not given access to anything more than, say, a TV or a video game station until they're a teenager. No tablets, no phones, things like that. And what they're doing to fill their time instead is the normal childhood stuff of playing outside, reading a book, coloring sheets, all of these things that seem like play but are actually building soft skills that make someone much better able to navigate the world around them as they get older. The gap is not going to be who can use AI and who cannot. The gap is not going to be who is an all-star on the ACT with a full ride and who is not. The gap is going to be who can reason in a basic way and who cannot. And those that cannot will probably be left behind.
So I remember taking a research methods class, and you guys, if any of y'all have taken a research methods class, or you're currently taking a research methods class,
sorry to this man.
I'm praying for you, sister or brother, because that shit is not easy. And the reason why that class is not easy is because it really requires the highest level of literacy skills possible. And I can admit, y'all, that class taught me a lot. I'm really glad I took that class, but it was not easy. I didn't just barely pass the class. I think I had like a B. But that was like it was teetering and tottering, okay? Because that class was genuinely difficult, okay? So I'm, again, not saying this to be like, oh, I know everything and nobody else does. Again, I'm not a moral superiority girly, okay? I'm humble enough to understand that this issue is not just with all of them, it's with all of us. But I'm not illiterate though. But you know, obviously everyone has things to work on. But my point in saying this was that it was really focused on finding the correct sources, making sure it's a .org and not a .com. Also figuring out what biases there are. Also figuring out if the study is even viable, if the article is even still qualified to be used as a cited source. So for example, if it was past, I believe, 2 years, you really can't, it's not ideal to use that as a source because it's technically outdated. Also, is it peer reviewed? There's so many things that you would not consider, like co-founding variables that, you know, also could impact and always do a study or an article. All of these different things that you don't really think about when you just see a TikTok. And the crazier thing is too, a lot of people will blame our generation for not getting enough, you know, doing enough research and like, oh, do your research, is such an insult, right? But it is even for educated people, even for people who are in an educational setting, it is very extremely difficult to find credible sources. If you were to genuinely try to do that with every bit of information that you stumble upon on the internet every single day, just think about all of the TikToks today. Just think about all the Instagram reels today that you saw that gave you some bit of information. How many of those TikToks did you actually go and research to see? And I'm talking about like peer reviewed, you know, academic research method. Oh, that beauty blender just got all over my white seats. Chances are maybe one, if even that. Probably none, honestly. And that's the real danger with social media. There's lots of dangers with social media. And of course, there's lots of pluses too. You know, just because I point out one thing doesn't mean that it excludes everything else. Once again, using our context clues to figure out what the author is trying to say. It is very dangerous how quickly misinformation spreads on social media. And there have been so many times that I have seen this come into fruition. For example, there was this one sound of Donald Trump going around, and it was basically him saying something outrageous, like calling someone chopped or something like that. Immediately when I heard the word chopped, I was like, okay, this is clearly AI. I went, did my little digging, clicked on the sound, went and did my little digging, and sure enough, obviously, it was AI. But you guys, that same day that I came across that sound, I saw 4 or 5 videos, I'm not even kidding, all with 500,000 likes, 700,000 likes, 200,000 likes, of people saying how funny Trump is and how if Trump wasn't president, he could have been a comedian and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, it's silly games, you know, it's nothing actually serious. But what if it actually is, though? What if when it actually is serious? What then? Very scary. It's to the point where people cannot even recognize clear signs of dog whistling or clear signs of propaganda without the "it's not that deep" brigade. And that is quite literally the reason why harsher regimes are going to be slowly implemented into our society and nobody fights back because it's not that deep, bro. I was actually just having a conversation with my friend about the workforce right now and how and why it got to the point where it is right now. Everyone I know personally, friends of friends, people are having to move back into their parents' house. And these are people, I'm telling you, these are people who work not only day and night, but they work hard as hell and they work pretty damn good jobs. But I know people who are in construction, you know what I mean? Working 12 hours days, working almost every single day of the week, and they're barely able to make rent with enough money to live after that. And it gets to a point. It truly does. It is so bad right now. And when you really think about it, it's like, how has this gotten normalized to where jobs are able to pay people a barely livable wage? It wasn't always like this either. People used to be able to actually afford things. And yes, there's other, obviously, the thing is too, again, we gotta stop questioning people's intelligence because I know there's gonna be someone like, well, actually, the economy was quite different back then. I understand how economics works, okay? I took economics classes. I took multiple economics classes because, again, I was studying psychology with an emphasis in business, okay? So I think I have a little bit of an understanding about economics. But even still, with that being said, regardless of inflation, regardless of all the co-founding variables, it is still such a stark difference, and it is still very sad how people used to actually be able to work a full-time job and that's it, and have disposable income. It might not have been a lot, but they would still, even if you were working just a regular job, you would still have enough disposable income after paying all your bills, after groceries, to go on a vacation every year. But that's not possible nowadays. The "it's not that deep, bro" is gonna be the reason why harsher regimes are implemented, and we're already starting to see the very, very beginning signs of that. So for example, the Sydney Sweeney ad.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
Sydney Sweeney, Casper Keynes.
I never really talked about it because I didn't really find a reason to, but now I do. Now I feel like this is a great example of exactly what I'm talking about, okay? It all went down in history as people are just jealous of Sydney Sweeney. People are jealous of Sydney Sweeney. Now, I'm sure there are some people that are jealous of Sydney Sweeney. There is someone who is jealous of every famous person because they're famous and they have money and they probably look good. And, you know, yeah, I'm sure there are people who are jealous of Sydney Sweeney. Now, you can say what you want about what the public reaction was to the Sydney Sweeney ad, especially the way that people were talking about her looks. If you're not new to the channel, you already know this about me. I am very against people bashing people's looks. I don't care who they are. It comes across as very mean girl, very bullying. There's no need to do that ever, but you can feel how you feel about the person. But when it comes to the actual ad campaign, a lot of certain right-leaning media platforms, they have a tendency to spread the worst misinformation ever. So there are a lot of right-leaning platforms who, when the outrage happened with the ad campaign, they showed the completely wrong ad that people were talking about. They were showing the other ads, you know, there was like maybe 3 or 4 ads that she did for American Eagle. They were showing the other ones, but they weren't showing the actual ad that people were actually getting enraged by. It is very, very sad that a lot of media right now, you really do have to fact check, even on the left. All media, you have to fact check it. When it comes to the advert that people were rightly outraged by, what people have to realize is that there is so much money, resources, and time spent on every single ad campaign that comes out of a company. I'm saying this as someone who works with companies and who went to school for business psychology. Emphasis in business. It wasn't business psychology, but I took a lot of courses that had to do with business. It's very meticulous. It's been planned out for months, a year, even years for some ad campaigns. People are prepping for their next year's Christmas campaigns right now. They probably already started last year. This ad goes through countless of people who have spent countless of hours in school specifically studying marketing strategies. And when I even went to school for marketing, or when I even took marketing classes, I realized that how unethical so many marketing strategies are. For example, everything is super targeted. For example, and I've talked about this before, there's a specific ad strategy where they make the ad look like a phone, specifically on iPhones, of course, so that older people or people who are not, as cognitively aware will get kind of deceived and tricked into clicking the link. Even like commercials, there's a certain level that they can turn up the volume compared to the rest of the show. So they can literally, that's why commercials are so loud, because they're supposed to, trigger your psychology so you can look at the screen. It's vetted. It goes through so many different people. It is every single word in an advertisement is quite literally that deep because there's messaging behind it. There's a messaging that they're trying to push out. If you are using literacy skills, you can very easily see that. So let's break this down. Genes are passed down from parents to offspring. So the exact verbiage here gives very scientific, right? Very genetic, biology, hereditary type of priming, right? It's priming the audience to expect something like that. A lot of the verbiage that people who are in certain groups tend to use tends to fall into that category. The thing is too about me, y'all, a lot of people underestimate me because I don't know if they think I'm just a girl or what, but I be doing my digging, y'all, okay? I have watched videos of those type of people. The eugenics crowd, Gee, let me tell you, I have done my investigation, and trust me, and I'm also the type of person too where, I don't know, I think my brain is just wired a little differently. Like, I don't really get triggered, or I don't get offended because I know where it comes from. I don't get triggered or offended at all. I don't take these people seriously. That's the thing. I don't actually take racist people seriously because I know that it's a fixation. Anyone who fixates so much on somebody, it's for a reason. They have a lot of pent up anger, frustration, rage coming from somewhere that they just want to project onto anyone. And the first target for a lot of people who are born white, or like happen to be white, or like happen to be born in a certain place, or all these other things. And I'm not saying all white people, obviously. Okay. I'm just saying that some of those people, some people who are born white are like, yay, I feel like I have a little bit of a leg up so I can kind of dog on whoever I can. But the exact verbiage here in that, and that phrase alone is something that I, as someone who has dibbled and dabbled into that space of the internet, because I'm just curious and I have to know how these people think. I have to pick their brains. It is very, very reminiscent of some of the verbiage that I've heard being used on these types of channels. Same thing with this next line, okay? And this is something that I don't think a lot of people have pointed out enough. Determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. Now, this sentence does something so subtle that an untrained eye would probably just brush right past it, right? It groups in personality with traits that you're born with, okay? So that implicitly implies that personality is also something that is hereditary. This reminds me of a video I saw in particular, and I'm not gonna shout out this channel, okay, because they are not getting free promo. But if you know, you know. If you're like me and you've done your investigations, you'll know. But there was this one video that I came across where it was like, yeah, you know, they always do this too. They pull up again, because research methods, brain coming in here, they pull up the most inaccurate, out of order, displaced, like there's so many things wrong about the studies that they'll pull up, but they'll pull up all these studies like, see, this is how Black people act. And like, I don't know what the obsession is with Black people in some groups. Like, why are y'all what is the obsession? Y'all like us, huh? Just say that then. A lot of them will say that, you know, the way, oh, that's just how Black people act. Look at the stats. You know, they're born this way. A lot of that rhetoric is there. So they'll use that argument of like, you know, personality is hereditary. Look at, you know, they'll do like a demographics thing. So they'll be like, yeah, like certain people from this area tend to act this way. And then certain people in this area tend to act this way because of this climate, whatever the hell. So basically, a lot of those videos will use the argument that personality is hereditary. And this is something that I want you guys to keep in mind too. If it really was about just talking about Sydney Sweeney's beauty, okay? If it really was just talking about how beautiful of a person Sydney Sweeney is, because that's the argument that a lot of people will use, it would have been a lot less about hair color. It would have been less about the color. It would have been more like, you know, genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining banging body proportions, like something like that. You know what I mean? Anything but what they hyper fixated on. You have to pay attention to what you're actually seeing and being fed. And then my genes are blue, which this was the one where people were like, oh, it's a double entendre. It's a double entendre because she has blue eyes. Well, of course. But why did they choose that specific double entendre though? Like, yeah, I get it. That is a little witty, but blue genes, our genes are blue, and she also has blue eyes, right? But it quite literally focuses on race-coded traits all the way through the advert. Now, obviously, that isn't to say that there aren't Black people with blue eyes too, because my uncle literally has blue eyes, by the way. But again, that specific phrase, the way it was set up, the way that it took you through this journey of, you know, the different phrases, it was most definitely intentional. And then finally, the final phrase is Sydney Sweeney has great genes. And again, we see this language come up with certain groups of people. If you know, you know. There's a reason why people on one side of the political spectrum are going to bats to defend this advert so freaking bad. And usually it's either people being intentionally dishonest, which unfortunately those tend to be people who are controlling the media, or people who just genuinely are not literate enough to process what they're being fed, what information, what messaging they're being fed. And I usually don't get into politics here, but we're seeing this play out in a way that is genuinely concerning. It is so insane and so scary to see the genuine vice president of the United States, come on to a press conference and blatantly lie. Or let me not say lie. I mean, he did kind of lie. He did kind of say that the ICE agent rammed, or was almost rammed, or was rammed, and had to be taken to the emergency room. The president tweeted that on his account. That, guys, I don't think we realize how scary that type of propaganda and messaging is.
Last Wednesday, during a protest against ICE, an ICE agent named Jonathan Ross shot a protester named Renee Good. What we've seen actually is the Trump administration very quickly stand by Ross.
I know that officer was acting in self-defense.
And to say that Renee Good was in the wrong.
This was an act of domestic terrorism.
That is bullshit. This was an agent recklessly using power.
But it is so crazy because we have video footage of that. That is something that is verifiable proof that we are there's misinformation being spread from the highest order in the United States. And this isn't about reading into things too deeply. It's about people not reading into things deep enough. I've been liking to go in with my setting spray before I put on my lip gloss because I feel like it makes my lip liner stay on a little bit longer. When people say things like, oh, this is very reminiscent of Nazi Germany, people are like, oh my God, like, oh, like they brush it off. But no, there are genuinely interviews. I remember when I was in school, we had like a whole section on, you know, Nazi Germany and how people, you know, we saw interviews of the ex-Nazis coming out and basically talking about how this all happened, like how this all escalated. And it's very reminiscent of what's going on right now. It really is. It really just started with little jokes, with misinformation here and there, with propaganda there, sprinkled there and there. And then it progressed from there and got more and more and more and more and more intense. And it wasn't an overnight thing. It was not an overnight thing, nor was it an over a week thing. It was a work in progress. And it started very similar to what we're seeing right now. And it's even scarier because we have the internet right now. It is the biggest vehicle for pushing out misinformation. And that, in combination with the fact that literacy rates are on the decline, I don't even want to use the word scary anymore because that's not even, like, I'm genuinely getting emotional. Like, this was all a work in progress. That's what I'm going to say about that. And I honestly hope that we get this together sooner rather than later. Because if we don't, we could really experience the next bad time in history. I really hope that that's not the case, but it's the reality that we're facing right now. So when people are like, oh, literacy crisis, oh my God, haha, so funny, like Kaisenat can't read. Okay, but this is something that we actually genuinely have to talk about because it's making us easier to manipulate and it's happening right under our noses. Anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Let me know what you guys thought about this conversation in the comments down below. As per usual, you know, and I really do like to end my videos on a positive note. Let this be a sign, let this be your inspiration and motivation to not only start reading, because I think, again, reading is such a small portion of, you know, learning and expanding your knowledge and understanding things, but really detach a little bit. Don't let yourself get so emotionally invested in things because 9 times out of 10 in the climate we're in, that's what it's meant to do. I will see you guys on another video soon. Bye, girl.